Sanibonani ngani kwethu umkamlingo omhlopheqwa nesinye futhi isiqephu a life worth mentioning. Namhlanje ngi-excited ngendlela eyisimanga because ngizobe ngikhuluma no Rose Govender from ProTalent. Baneyindaba ezimnandi. If umuntu ofuna umsebenzi, you definitely want to watch the episode. It's a matter of listening and listening carefully because you might win yourself 5K. 5,000 rand. So kana ngabu esela Rose sekhuluma ngizocela ukuthi umlalelisise because we might ask you a question. Rose, can you join me? Please, can you briefly introduce yourself?
I'm Rose Govender. I'm the General Manager and Specialist Recruiter at ProTalent Recruitment. And we're excited about this conversation where we can educate candidates and add value. And we are also excited about the giveaway.
I'm so excited about the giveaway. Iziphi izinto ozowina mengabe ungilalelile wangilalelisisa. Okokuqala uzowina 1,000 rand voucher ukuthi uhambe wenze shopping pavilion. Okusho ukuthi kumele ube umuntu ongakwazi ukuthi uye pavilion eKZN. Okwesibili ungaziwinela i-voucher ka 3K ukuthi uthathe izithombe professional uphinde futhi ulekelele ku social media wakho ukuze ukhulise ipage lakho na ukuthi nje ushow up ku social media on a way that makes you look professional kubantu abangaqasha. Thirdly, ungaziwinela 1,000 rand voucher yokuthi uthole i-consult no ProTalent to understand ukuthi abantu abazoqasha badingani kuwena. So please listen to our conversation properly because you might walk away with something worth 5K. Rose, let us now go have our conversation. Are you ready?
Absolutely ready.
Thank you. Ngibenu bafuna imisebenzi bayazibuza ukuthi ungawuthola kanjani umsebenzi. Namhlanje ngizobe ngikhuluma nomuntu omkantshubovu kule topic odila kakhulu nama candidates afuna umsebenzi. Uzoza ke introduce asitshela ukuthi ubani, asitshela irole yakhe ayidlalayo, aphinde ke asitshela ukuthi ungenze njani mengabe uyi candidates. Sitting down with Rose Govender from ProTalent. Rose, please can you tell us your role at ProTalent? What do you do?
I am Rose Govender. I am the General Manager and Specialist Recruiter at ProTalent. We are an agency of 31 years and we have a few specializations that we work in. Our team's made up of 13 consultants that all service the national and remote international industries. And I think it's safe to say that we are in a job that allows us to place people into their jobs.
Well, that. What support do you give our candidates? What support do they get in the process, the recruitment process?
So, it has to start from the beginning, Pearl. Sometimes we receive a CV and it's not at the standard that is required. And again, it's whether a candidate gets a job through us or on their own. Your CV is the first impression that any prospective employer or agency is going to have of you. So the first thing is if we see glaring mistakes or if we see a CV that can be made better, we give them advice to say, this is what you're presenting the world as a version of you. It needs to be the best representation of you. And then we go through the experience. We get to know the candidate. And that's the difference between us and an agency that will give you a quick 1-minute call and send your CV through to a client. We want to get to know you. We want to know what is the next step in your mind. What types of jobs are you applying for? And how you would also be well matched to the opportunity that we have. And then once your CV is sent through to the client, that constant communication is important because everyone wants to know where am I at in the process.
Yes.
And once we are able to secure an interview with the client for them, we don't over-prep candidates. We want them to be the natural, original version of themselves, but we do tell them what is needed so they have a winning advantage over another candidate that's sitting next to them for the same job. So, there's a few things that any candidate can do that will set them apart or make them stand out in a market that's overcrowded with candidates looking for work. We know our unemployment rates. And simple things like being well prepared for an interview, going through the job spec, knowing your CV well, doing some research on the company. All of these things just help a candidate to have a winning advantage over the person sitting next to them. And that's where we come in. It's just to make sure that their confidence levels are good and they are presenting the best version of themselves as well.
Oh, I love that. Rose, please tell us, what candidate do you typically work with?
So, contrary to what people think, the expectation is that an agency must help all people, and I think we know we can't be all things to all people as much as we'd like to. And sometimes we interview the most amazing candidates, but we're not at the point where we can help them at that point.
Yes.
So we do two things. We interview candidates for talent, because we can see on their CV that this is a candidate we'd be able to market through to our clients, we'd be able to put through on our top talent, and we'd be able to help at some point because we get those types of roles coming in. And then the second thing we do is we interview candidates for specific roles that we have and that we're working currently. So to answer your question, Pearl, we deal with mid to senior level candidates, anybody that's earning from about 15,000 and above, because our clients come to us for skilled employees. So as much as we'd love to help candidates that are semi-skilled or unskilled, it's not the market that we play well in, we do a lot of work in. We are very much more focused on candidates that are skilled to right until senior level. So even if it's a CEO or a CFO, we do a lot of work in that space. But what it's not is candidates who are unskilled, unfortunately.
What message would you like to share with job seekers right now?
I think we all have been a job seeker at one point in our lives, and what we would want for any job seeker is what we wanted, which is hope. And I think it's hard to be hopeful when, I hear candidates saying to me all the time, I've applied for 1,000 jobs and I haven't had one response, or I haven't even had a response to an email that I would have sent. You'd be surprised how if you just respond to a candidate and say, thank you for your CV, I'll be in touch if I have opportunities, they are so blown away by that because they apply for so many jobs and they get no response. I think it's important to acknowledge as an agency, we aren't able to respond to every candidate that applies for a job. So if you can imagine, we put out a job advert and we'd get 1,000 applications. And if we respond to 1,000 candidates, we'll do no other work because that's how time consuming it can be. What we do is we contact the candidates that are shortlisted for a position. But, we do try and we do challenge ourselves to reply to as many candidates as we can, just so they know that we care. And I think for me, the most important thing is people not giving up. It's so easy to give up when you're a job seeker and every day you're applying and you're going for interviews and nothing's happening. But I'd like to tell you, interviews give you interview experience. Yes. Every interview prepares you for the next interview. Absolutely. And you just get better. And sometimes we've learned in this game, Pearl, that if an opportunity doesn't work out, it wasn't meant for you because there was something better that's meant for you. I think if you go for an interview and you're hopeless, it shows in the interview. It shows when the client is talking to you and assessing your confidence levels and asking you to articulate your experience. So no matter what you're going through and no matter how many jobs you've applied for, no matter how many interviews you've been for, go to each interview expecting to get the job.
I love that.
So that you present the best version of yourself, because that is important. Because if you are low in confidence or you're despondent, you're not going to be able to tell the employer why you are the best person for the job. So if anything, I would say to job seekers that be hopeful no matter what. Be hopeful, because if you're persistence is key. And if you treat job hunting like a job where you do the necessary activities every day and you make the effort and you go beyond and you prepare well for interviews, at some point you will get the job, and that's my message.
So Rose, ngicela ungitshele-ke ngumuntu ofuna umsebenzi isiphi step sokuqala ekumele ngisenze mengabe ukuthi ngifuna uku-approacha i-agency yenu?
So Paul, I think candidates sometimes underestimate the importance of having a good relationship with your recruiter. Sometimes they feel like you're just the recruiter, and I think the realization that you are the first point of contact in assisting them with their job or getting a job is such an important realization. We sometimes have candidates, when we're interviewing them, they're in their pajamas or their hair's in a bun and they're not ready or they're not presenting the best version of themselves that they would present to a client. Remember, we have the task of sending your CV through to the client and we have the relationship with the client.
Yes.
So I'm not going to want to send your CV, Pearl, if you're not looking like this and if you're not and I'm not trying to stereotype people because everyone's different, but you at least need to be well presented. That is important, because if you're sloppy, then it tells me you're not taking this seriously, tells the employer you're going to be sloppy when you take the job on. So it's so important to make sure, without compromising who you are in terms of your originality, that you just are well prepared for interaction with the recruiter. Again, going to your question, what is the first step? The first step would be to register with us. We have on our website, there is a link to register with us. If you work in the fields that we work in, you'd be a good match for us. And if you register with us, you're automatically on our database, where we would be able to find you in a search when we're looking for a specific position or for a specific skill. The other thing is that all our contact information is on our website. So the email addresses for the different specialists, or just generally if you want to connect with us, all our contact information is there. I think it's so important for candidates to connect and to partner with agencies, because remember, we are connected to top employers.
Yes.
We are connected to majority of the employers in and around the area that you'd want to work in. So besides doing the general things to find a job, partnering with recruitment agencies is critical to your success, because we are seeing the opportunities that you might not get to see. Because a lot of employers don't advertise. They just come to us and they just want to work exclusively with us. So broadening your network and casting the net wider when you are on the job market is of the utmost importance. And it starts with being intentional with a recruitment agency like us, where you do the things, you register the CV, you even email it to us. When you connected with a recruiter, you make sure you establish and maintain a relationship with them. We might not be able to help you today, but we will be very honest about what the journey is going to be and at what point we believe we'd be able to help you. And if nothing else, even if we aren't able to help you, we'd give you tips on how to help yourself. So I think the first step again is to register with us, is to make sure we have your CV and to make sure that you are connected with somebody in our team, depending on their specialization and what you are doing, so that it gives you a winning advantage.
Wow, thank you so much for those points. So njengoba esho Rose, ngizocela ukuthi uye kwi-website yabo, just check i-website yabo, so that uzokwazi ukuthi imiphi imisebenzi abangakwazi ukuthi bakulekelele uyithola. So Rose, awungitshele, yiziphi izinto ezodo nezinto ezodon't kuma-candidate? Yiziphi nje izinto ekumele bazenze, iziphi izinto ekumele bangazenzi?
Well, we need a whole day for this topic. But I think if I can put it in a nutshell, let's start with do's. Starting point, have a professional CV. Again, this is the first representation of you that any prospective employer or agency will see. And if you can't do it yourself, get someone to do it for you. I think that's where a lot of candidates try to do a CV and it's not a great format, or it doesn't have all the required information, and they haven't asked for help. There's a lot of online templates. There's a lot of people or companies that will get your CV done for you. Invest in yourself, because again, that's what people are going to see of you before they even meet with you. So have a professional CV done. Another thing you'll never believe is that we have CVs that we see that are lovely, but there's no contact information. And then it becomes a task to find the candidate. And you're just making it harder for yourself if either your contact information has changed and you haven't updated it, or there's no contact information at all. And sometimes as recruiters, we just think like you want to be helped to find a job. Why is it not, common thinking that you would put your contact information? It's actually not. So I would encourage candidates to make sure that your contact information, even put a secondary number on your CV so that you are contactable for a job. And a lot of times candidates are in a job, so they can't take a call, which is great, but then we'll always send you a follow-up email. Check your emails if you're on the job market, because sometimes I'll get a response 2 months later to say, hi, I'm so sorry, I didn't see your email, but I am keen, and it's too late at that point. So contact information is very important. Being contactable is very important. I think candidates don't understand that if you're on the job market, you have to be available. Firstly, you've got to be available for an interview with me. And that means you've got to make time for an interview with me, because I'm the person that's marketing you through to clients.
Yes.
Secondly, find the candidate, love their CV, they match the opportunity, the job spec, and then you say to them, the client wants to interview you. Sorry, I can't attend interviews. It's very difficult at work. I understand that, but if you're on the job market, you have to expect to be called for interviews. It doesn't happen where you're just going to get the job without an interview. So if you're not able to attend interviews, or you're not going to be slightly flexible, because we can be flexible, then you're not on the job market, because you're wasting your time and mine if you cannot attend an interview. So I think being available is so important. Another thing that is a struggle with candidates is that we struggle to get their documents. So have all of your documents in a folder, your ID, your pay slips, your qualifications, anything that you feel would be important for you when you're on the job market needs to be available and accessible quickly, because that's the first thing we're going to ask you. As an agency, we have to verify all the information we put on a CV and send to a client. So if I don't have a matric certificate for you, I can't just assume you've done your matric. I've got to verify that. So having all your important documents easily accessible is a do. It's important, and we won't be able to proceed further with you if you don't have that. I think being proactive is important. Like I say, you've got to have a relationship with the recruiter, especially if you're in a specialization that recruiter does a lot of work for. So check in with the recruiter, give us feedback after an interview. If you see something on our website that you want to apply for, be in contact with us, because everybody needs to do their part in the process as well. And like I said, we often, might not find a candidate when we're doing a search, but if a candidate approaches us to say, I've seen a position on your website and I think I'd be perfect for it, it helps the process just go faster. So I think that's important. I can't stress the importance of preparing for an interview, Pearl. When you are unprepared for a meeting with a client, it shows, and it automatically puts you at a disadvantage. So when I say being prepared for an interview, dress the part.
Absolutely.
Be well presented. Do your research on the company. Look at what projects they're busy with so that you can mention it in the interview. Do your research on the people that are going to be interviewing you. Look at their LinkedIn profiles. Look at what they've done in the last few years. Know the job spec well. If you arrive for an interview and you haven't gone through the job spec and the client is asking you a question, or the employer rather is asking you a question, and your response is, I actually didn't see that on the job spec. Automatically you are putting yourself at a disadvantage. Also know your CV. Sometimes the employer is asking you, so I see you worked here from this period to that period, and you're not sure about the period in your head, or because you've moved a few jobs, it can get messy. Know your CV well. Know your achievements well, because besides your CV, what sets you apart from another candidate? It's your achievements. What have I done in each company that I've worked for? What value have I added? That automatically gives you an advantage over another candidate. So I think that's important for me. Be polite, be friendly, I think be open-minded. Often I'll have feedback from a client where the client will say, I was saying to the candidate that, this is also part of the job. And the candidate said, well, I'm not open to that. This is what I can do, and I'm not prepared to be open-minded. So be open-minded. Sometimes the job is not going to be packaged exactly how you want, but the things that are going to be taught to you or you're going to train on is an opportunity for you to broaden your skill set as well. So I think that is important. And just be honest in an interview. Remember, if you get the job, they're going to work with you. And if you said certain things in the interview and they weren't true, that's going to be a problem when you get the job. So being polite, being honest is so important. And one of the issues we have with candidates sometimes is reference checking or references. I can't tell you how many times I've had a cousin or an aunt or an uncle that's the reference. And mind you, we verify references. So don't lie. Be honest about your references. Also, remember, a reference is not a colleague. A reference is a superior or a manager that you've reported into that would be able to give us a true account of your performance. The other issue we have is that candidates don't inform their references that we're going to call. So they're unprepared for our call, and they don't give us the time or the reference that's going to be to the candidate's advantage. So if you're putting down a reference on your CV and you're on the job market, obviously it's going to be a reference from a previous employer. Let them know that they may be called for a reference. Sometimes, a lot of times, Pearl, you'll be surprised, candidates put their current employers as references. And they'll tell us you can call, and then we'll have this moment where the current employee is saying, well, I didn't know that this person's on the job market. These are all the things that we go through as recruiters that's so important for candidates to know. So we don't generally call a current employer unless a candidate hasn't worked anywhere else before and they've had this conversation with their manager. But if you're putting down a reference on your CV, know that you're giving permission to employers or agencies to call that reference. So make sure your reference is aware that that's going to happen.
So Rosie uthi ungamfaka uncle wakho, ungamfaka umalume as a reference. Ungamfaka ukazini, ungamfaka uma wakho as a reference. I-reference makube umuntu osusebenzile kuyena. Hayi umuntu osebenza kuyena currently. It is so important ingane zakwethu. Hayi umuntu osebenza kuyena currently, but umuntu okwazi ukuthi ubuperforma kanjani emsebenzini. Rose, I'm going to ask a question. What happens if my reference will not want to say something positive about me? What happens in a situation like that?
So that's a very good question, Paul, because not every job that we've had may have been a good experience for us. For me, the answer would be, again, that relationship between you and your recruiter. So if you worked for a company and you had a difficult manager and you didn't have a good experience in that company or with that manager, communicate that to the recruiter, and so that we know when the reference is done and it's not all amazing things about Pearl, we can also be able to have a conversation with the client about that, to say, this reference is good, this one is not so great, because the candidate has communicated that these were the challenges in this job. And again, it's a person giving an account of you, so it's not, everything's not totally dependent on that. But I think my answer to that would be, make sure that the recruiter knows the experience you've had in that company, so that when they have to market you to a client, they'll be able to have that conversation with the client to say, these were the challenges in the job, and this is why the reference is not as good as the other reference. The other thing we do as recruiters is, if the reference is not great, we do another reference. So that kind of balances it out, so that we can see that the person was not great at every job. So that's something that's important as well.
What Rose is saying is so important. That I would like to just add to top what Rose just said. If you didn't have a good experience in seventeen or 7 do not publicize it on social media. Do not put it on social media. Or say, this is my experience with a certain company. Because the recruitment companies like ProTalent, they use social media to even do a screening of our candidates. So the first thing they're going to do is social media, you are venting about how unfair it was to work for that company. And the potential, if client then so what would you like to add when it comes to not having a good experience and now I find myself venting with social media?
So it's exactly what you said, Pearl. Part of the requirements of our clients is to do a screening of the candidate on social media. And, my advice to candidates or to people in general is, don't put your feelings on social media. It is so important for a candidate to always display positivity on social media, because that is something that's available to the public to look at with regards to you.
So Rose, please tell me what set your agency apart from all other agencies?
I think from a candidate perspective, Pearl, we see the candidate. And it's easy to, in our industry, it's easy to just need placements to happen because that's how an agency makes their money. But what makes us successful and sets us apart from our competitors is the fact that we are personal. We're personal with our candidates. We give them advice that's going to help them, not just through us, but even on their own. We handhold through the journey if they're being considered for an opportunity with us. And we don't take shortcuts in any way. We're very compliance driven, and we are genuinely interested in finding the right opportunity for a candidate in terms of what would be best for them.
I'm an employer's match, the brand, when it comes to the recruitment process.
So I think two things that are important for me, Pearl. The first one is that I think employers don't understand that recruitment or the interview process is a branding tool for your company. And it's so important for us to maximize this, because when a person comes into your organization for an interview, you're showcasing your company to them. They are free publicity for your company. They will do your marketing for you without you even knowing it. So I think treating a candidate respectfully and being excited about the opportunity to work for your organization is non-negotiable if you want to find top talent for your organization. Remember, just the way you interviewing a candidate, they're also interviewing you as a company, and they also have a list of things they're looking for in an employer. So, I think being welcoming and, this old regime of having a panel and everybody making the candidate feel nervous, you're not going to get the best out of the person. I think creating a relaxed environment where a person can showcase or articulate their experience, their skills, their personality, their attitude, all of that is so important, because that person's taken time off work or made the effort to come to you. I think you have the responsibility of getting as much out of the candidate as possible. And you're not going to get any of that if the person's feeling nervous or they're feeling intimidated because there's a whole panel sitting around them. So starting an interview on a light note is so important to be able to relax the candidate and help them to tell you all about themselves, because you're trying to find the best talent for your company. Also, make sure your people friendly, like your receptionist, people walking past. A company needs to have a culture where people greet people at reception. I can't tell you how many times I've had candidates saying, "Oh no, it was very cold, hey?" Like nobody looks at you, nobody talks to you. Even the receptionist doesn't even pick her head up to acknowledge you as a person. 101. That's that's welcoming people 101. You've gotta make sure people feel welcomed in your organization, because they're gonna go back and say, this company is such a cold company. You don't want to work there. I went there for an interview and it was terrible. Or I didn't feel great. And I've had my own experiences where I've been to massive companies that are very well known and I didn't like the interview experience. So I actually didn't take the job. Even though it would look great on my resume, because you want to work for such, and you have a bucket list of clients or employers that you want to work for. But how a candidate feels in an interview is of the utmost importance. And again, when they leave your organization, whether they're going to get the job or not, they have had a positive experience with you. And I think, at the end, giving feedback, that's where a lot of our clients or a lot of employers sometimes don't get it right. Like, you found your person and that's great and they're going to start, but what happens to the 2 or 3 candidates that you also interview that you owe that feedback to? So important, because they could become prospective employees at a later stage, or they could refer people to your organization. So that is so important. And I think understanding that recruitment is a branding tool, we do a whole talk on it, and it's been such an eye-opener for people that have attended. It's actually been a requested talk that we do. It's so important because there's so much of value in making an effort in an interview as an employer. The second thing, Pearl, is, as a recruiter and as a company, we'll do everything to get it right in the process, in the interview process, and then we found the person. Everyone's excited. Candidate is excited. Client is excited. We are excited as recruiters. And then it all falls down in orientation and induction. Firstly, some companies don't have an orientation or induction plan or process for a new employee. Now put yourself in that position. You start on day 1, nobody knows you're starting, your workstation is not set up, you're not meeting with anyone, you're given the job description and you're like, okay, now you can start work. Stats will tell you 2 out of 3 people are looking for the next job within 6 months of starting a job. You want to start your employee off on the right note. You want to be excited for their arrival. You want them to feel you were well planned and you were looking forward to their start. They've served their notice period in their previous company. Now they're looking forward to something better. And if it's an underwhelming welcome, it sets a bad tone for the employment relationship from the beginning. So, in our office, we make such a big deal of a new person starting. We set up their desk, we put chocolates, we put all their stationery, welcome banner, balloons, all of that. And then we have a full week of training, and it's all scheduled, it's all very professionally done, because we want them to know we're excited for your arrival. We want you to win. So we're going to do everything possible to make sure you do win. And that's the advice I want to give to employers, is that you've got to make sure you've got an induction program for a new person. Even if they come in with a required skill and you feel like they don't need a lot of training, it's a whole different environment they're coming into. And I think them understanding your role and their role and setting them up for success and constant communication is the difference between an employee staying long term or leaving within a few months of starting.
I love that. I absolutely love that. So Rose, please tell me, ubamesha kanjani ke ama candidates with ama roles? How do you match them?
So this is a bit of a complex question, Pearl. And the reason is because when we get a role from a client, we have the responsibility to connect with the client and make sure, besides what's on the job spec, they're telling us what they want in the person, what values, what their culture is like, what are the key skills that's required for the role. So when we have insight into a role like this, it helps us to shortlist the right candidates for the position. And that is the starting point of looking at candidate CVs and looking at understanding the job spec from the client and the brief from the client and making sure we're sending them the right candidates for a position. Sometimes it means candidates are despondent because they believe they match what they're seeing on the job spec or what they're seeing on an advert. But remember, there are also other aspects of a role in terms of culture, in terms of fit, in terms of companies that they would have worked for that employers are looking for. And sometimes we have feedback from the client that's very detailed and sometimes we don't. And sometimes a candidate is not shortlisted because of external factors. They found somebody internally or they had their own referral or they decided to they're not finding what they're looking for, so they decided to put the role on hold. There's so many external factors and we try our best to communicate to candidates in terms of why they were not shortlisted for a role. But we do our best also to match the job spec and the details that the client has given us with the candidate in terms of their skills, experience, etc. And this doesn't just mean we look at a CV. This means a conversation with the candidate. It means getting to know them. It means seeing the potential in them that the client is looking for. It means also assessing attitude and potential and value that could be added in the future. So sometimes a candidate would look for or a client would look for a candidate and the candidate that we're finding doesn't tick all the boxes or have all the necessary skills, but we see the potential. That's where we come in. So we'd be able to market the candidate to the client to say, I know that they don't have all of the skills or experience, but this is what they have and we believe they would be a great fit for your organization. So it's a very interactive consultative process.
Rose, what happens if a candidate what happens?
Pearl, I think for every recruiter, this is the worst part of the job. You have to phone your candidate and say, I'm so sorry, but unfortunately you didn't get the job. And especially when you and the candidate believe that this job was perfect for them. And it happens on a daily basis in our industry when we have to regret our candidates for whatever reason, and there'd be a variety of reasons. But I think what I'd say to job seekers that didn't get the job or that were unsuccessful after an interview process is stop and think, what have I gained from this? What have I taken from this that's going to help me in my next interview or in the next job? Because again, you'd be asked questions that would prompt you to think about things like your achievements or something you've done on the job. So I always believe that every interview is a learning experience. So I think take what you can from it and be better. And again, it's a message of hope. Just don't lose hope. You just never know which is the right opportunity for you. And you know, Pearl, a job is a spiritual thing here.
Yes.
Because we spend most of our time at work.
Yes.
And we give a lot of value while at work. So it's not always just about getting yourself into a job. It's also about getting yourself into a job where you're going to add value, you're going to feel fulfilled, and you're going to feel passionate about what you do. Because if you're not feeling those things, sometimes you can go into a state of depression. And we have that a lot with our candidates where they're in a job and they're so unstimulated. It's a toxic environment. They have a bad manager, whatever the case may be, and it affects everything about them. So sometimes when a job hasn't worked out for you, it's actually a blessing in disguise. And you've got to have this attitude where you're not going to be shaken by that.
Yes.
But you're going to use that experience to help you with your next until you find the job that's right for you. Because there's a different dynamic when you find the right job. You become the best version of yourself, and that's ultimately what we try to do. Cindy and I are very similar in that we always want to give value to both candidates or clients. So if it's a despondent client or if it's a despondent candidate, we always give them the benefit of the doubt. We're always trying to say, okay, how can I help you? How can I be better? I'm sorry. And I think this industry lacks that, where, you know, when you have a irate candidate or an irate client, you want to have your defenses up. And I don't always think that's solution. And that is the solution. And that's one thing that Cindy's she's known for. She has a reputation for the client is always right. Candidate is always right. We're here to serve, and that's something that she instills in us all the time. Sometimes we're not so excited about it, but it goes back to having a heart for people, which is our value. And I just want to emphasize the role of social media in the recruitment industry. Years ago, it wasn't so major, but now everyone's on social media. We don't know many people that aren't. And as a recruitment agency or in this industry, we make sure that we are on social media as well.
Yes.
So we maximize the platforms to reach more candidates and clients, but mostly candidates. So I would encourage job seekers to make sure you're following us on LinkedIn, on Facebook, Instagram. Those are the platforms we usually put out all of our vacancies. We do something called urgent vacancies, where for the week, all our urgent vacancies are advertised. People can apply. You can apply online. For the very specialist roles that we have, we put a bit more detail on social media in terms of what we're looking for. If you're not on social media, if you're not on at least LinkedIn, you are doing yourself a disservice, because that is where all the recruitment agencies and employers are advertising the roles that they have, and where there would be a lot of opportunity for job seekers as well.
Giveaway time. In order for you to win the 5,000 Rand worth of prize, please answer the simple question: what is the first step on the recruitment process? What is the first step on the recruitment process? Please make sure that you type your answer on the comments below, and make sure you are following ProTalent on all their social media platforms. This is a life worth mentioning with Umgamlungu Mhlophe. Till next time, bye-bye.